All right, hello and welcome to another Expert Inside interview. My name is John Golden from Sales Pop, online sales magazine and Pipeliner CRM, joining you as usual from a sunny San Diego. And today I'm delighted to be joined by Pete Neubig, who is in Houston, Texas. How you doing, Pete?
John, I'm doing fantastic. Thanks for having me on today.
Yeah, of course. Thank you for coming on. And Pete's co-founded Empire Industries Realty and Property Management in Houston, Texas, which he sold to Mind Management, where he served as the VP of Eastern Operations. He is now the co-founder and CEO of VPM Solutions, an online platform connecting the real estate industry with virtual team members globally. You're a past board member of the National Association of Residential Property Managers. In your free time, you host a podcast, and in your free time, you run marathons with your wife.
She's more the marathoner now. I'm kind of more like the walker these
Or more
days.
the
So
walker or the guy holding up the sign,
that's right.
the
I need to
encouragement
update my
signs.
bio. Yeah.
Yeah. And what we're going to talk about today is the number one way to increase productivity and profitability. All right, so Pete, let's get straight into it. I'm sure anybody listening is already wants to know what is the number one way to increase
So I'm
productivity
gonna
and profitability.
I'm gonna take a little bit different angle because
Yep,
obviously a great way is automation
sure.
and using tech. The challenge that we found, especially in a service-based industry, is that you have to really have your processes down, right? You have to understand because
Mhm.
if you do automation, use technology, it's kind of garbage in, garbage out.
Yep.
And for a service-based industry, as you increase the your business, you have to hire more people. And for us, what we found was hiring people in the US, especially, back before 2020, when everybody had this thing
Mhm.
called an office, you had you had to like find people that were willing to travel, right, to 20 miles, right? So your pool of candidates was really limited
Yep.
to that 20-mile radius. And of course, now everybody knows like, oh, let's go virtual. Virtual is a great way. And what we did is we expanded that and we went virtual in second and third world countries. So we started going virtual in Mexico and Philippines. And what happened was I was able to hire more people than I could in the States. It was like almost like a 3 to 1.
Yep.
And so by hiring more people, your payrolls either stays the same or goes down, right? But now you're given a much better a much better client experience. So your churn rate goes down, and also your churn rate of customers goes down, but your churn rate of a team goes down because they're not as stressed out.
Yeah.
And so our revenue went up, our churn rate went down, and what those two things mean is it means more money in your pocket.
Mhm.
Right. So by hiring the right people, and what we found is you can pay somebody around $10 an hour, and they're bilingual, they're college educated, and they see this not as a job, but
Yes.
they see it as a opportunity, and they see it as a career.
Yep.
And so just that mind shift is completely different, and just get better team members.
Mhm.
And
Yeah, I have to say I totally agree with you, absolutely, Pete. And I think, I think this was starting even before COVID. I think around the financial crisis 2008. I think and after that, I think that was the first time that people started to question that idea of
Mhm.
moving for a job. Because what happens? We've all had everyone's had that experience. What happens? You move for a job, you go to an expensive place, you either pay an exorbitant amount of money for a mortgage to be close to the office, or you take on a horrendous commute to get
Yep.
to the office. And then what happens? There's a downturn and they let people go, and suddenly those people are stuck with high mortgages or living somewhere that they don't want to live. And again, COVID, I think, exacerbated that. And I think now, if you're not if you can do it, if your business allows you to do it, and you're not looking to leverage the best people or the most effective, cost effective people where they are, then you're on a loser.
Yeah, I think you're going to go out of business,
Yep.
honestly, if that's the case. So you obviously expand your talent pool, you get better people, it's a low cost, and so then what happened with us is, you have to train them, right? And there's
Mhm.
there's definitely some training involved, but once you train them and you get the processes down, then we were able to take those processes and automate them.
Mhm.
Whether you're using something like Process Street in our industry, we have certain things like Lead Simple, like it's processes built for property management. You
Yep.
have some real estate specific processes, and then once you automate, Now you can double in size and you don't need to hire any more people. So the
Mhm.
people you've hired, they're great and they can do double, triple the work than if you didn't have the automation.
Yeah.
So
And by the way, just saying, I totally agree with you as well. But as you said, the first step is to define your processes. It
100%.
did because otherwise, as you said, I mean, if you have badly defined or inefficient or ineffective processes, when you automate them, they're just going to be automated, crappy processes, right? They're not. You're just using technology, and you're still got a crappy process. So that's the key: is you have to do that.
And I'll give you an example of that. So in real estate, property management, maintenance is kind of like it's like the 800-pound gorilla. It takes
Mhm.
80% of your time,
Right.
just coordinating it, getting approvals, all that good stuff. And before I did my process and hired people, I threw technology at it, and the technology what happened was it just exponentially made things worse.
Mm,
Right? Because now all this stuff's coming in, things are flying out, no one knows what's going on. And what I realized was I missed a step because I shut the technology down. I hired the people, I trained them. Right now, this was a 90-day process. It wasn't like I hired somebody
sure.
within a week and they were up and running. Right, I got them trained, and then after about 90 days, about 20% of the tickets would pop up, right? Escalate, right? So we got them the 80-20 rule. And then we went back to the platform and turned on the automation and we turned on the technology. And all of a sudden, we went from the worst performing division in our company to the top performing division in our company, where people from other areas of the country
Mhm.
were literally calling me up and coming to our office, which actually they didn't have to because no one was in the office and the technology was
Right.
there. But they wanted to know what we did. How did we solve that main challenge? And it all goes back to if you don't have the process documented, and then the next thing is if you don't have a good job description. So John, I've seen too many now that we're in VPM, we're a platform, but we also help recruit, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So I've seen job descriptions where it's like answer phones, write memos, all of the duties assigned by by management,
Mhm.
right? And so the more the more vague that job description is, what that means is you have no idea what job
Yeah,
role is supposed to do.
yeah,
So it kind of goes back to the process. Once you document the process and you know the process, you inherently know what that person's supposed to do. So then
yeah,
you can build a job description, right?
yeah.
And
And
most
and
people,
yeah, and I was gonna say, and maybe Pete, when you do that, you discover, and I think this is the thing that a lot of people made mistakes over, as you said earlier, traditionally scaled by people. And as you said, you have something that needs to be done. So you find some job description online and you just copy it, you fire it, you hire the person because you're desperate for this part of the job to get done. Once they're there, you discover that, oh, actually, it's only a quarter of a job. And now I've got to find other stuff for them to
yeah,
do. And you end up with bloated employees, as opposed to the great thing about using virtual or even variable resources. You can hire somebody for a fractional job.
you can. But if you know the process and you know the job
Yeah,
description, you know ahead of time if that's a full-time role, or
exactly.
can you mold two jobs together, right? So now they're not just a maintenance coordinator, but they're also the leasing coordinator.
Right.
And so the next piece of it is you have to understand what your values are as a company, or core values is kind of the buzzword. But what
Mhm.
are the characteristics of a good team member in your company? And just because they're a good team member in my company doesn't mean they're a good team member in your company.
Right.
My company might have completely different values than your company. So you have to understand who you are as a company. And what I find is most people, they have all these processes built for their operations, but they don't have a hiring process. And so they
Mhm.
don't even know how to hire. So getting the job description right, understanding how much work is going to be for that job description. And then I'm a big fan of, like, obviously you have to know your values, get the right person in the organization, or I like to say the right person in the foxhole with you,
Yeah.
because we're going to battle every day in business, right? And then you have to determine, is that person, so that person's a good fit for your organization. You figure that out. Now, are they a good fit for that job? And a lot of people are looking for people with experience and they're missing out on the attitude, right?
Mm.
And if you're looking for kind of low level, kind of entry level positions, right? Like again, property management or realtor
Yep.
or most service based business, you don't need a PhD, you don't need a doctor. We're not. I'm not Elon Musk going to
Mhm.
Mars, so you don't need the skill set. What you do is you need somebody who's coachable, and you need somebody who can learn.
Yeah.
And so personality profiling, I'm not sure if your user if your listeners are big onto that, but like I use Disc. It's
Yeah.
kind of free, it's cheap, it's easy to understand. And so when we build job descriptions, every bullet point in that job description, we put down what personality type it should be.
Right.
So a quick example would be if I'm going to hire a salesperson, they have a personality type that's outgoing, people oriented. And then an accountant is somebody who's introvert and detailed. They're complete opposites. So if I'm going to create a job description, I need somebody in sales and I need somebody in accounting. Those are two jobs that you can't combine because that personality type very rarely exists. It does just
Yeah.
doesn't exist because they're such opposites. So
Yeah.
once you have that, then okay, I got the right person in the foxhole with me. They know which way to shoot the rifle, so to speak. They know exactly what they're going to do based on the job description. They know how to shoot the rifle in the right direction, based on their personality profile. Now I can hire them, and then you have to train them and manage them.
Yeah.
Easier said than done. Once you do all that though, and you spend a lot of time with them up front, that person, you will get all your time back in perpetuity. And most jobs, entry level, take 2 to 4 weeks of training if you do it correctly. So you spend a lot of time. And I can tell you, John, when I had my business, I was already putting in 10, 12 hours a day. The
Yeah.
last thing I wanted to do is hire somebody and train them for an hour to hour and a half a day. But I did, and I was working 14-hour days, but I did that for like 90 days. And next thing you know, that 80% problem I was telling you about went down to about 10% of my time.
Yeah, because there's a few things there. There's a few things there, Pete, that I just wanted to pick up on. Number
Mhm.
one, I think you're 100% right. I mean, the personality traits and that, I think those are huge. Whether it's DISC, Briggs Myers, whatever, or Myers Briggs, whichever way it's around. I can't
Projective
remember.
index is another
Yeah,
one.
all of those. I think they're incredible. I think what you want is to have as many data points as possible to support your thesis. And then the other thing too, Pete, another mistake that people fall into is this idea of, instead of like hiring somebody, looking at what they really do well and then trying to make sure that you leverage that as much as you can, the things that they're really, really good at. We hire people, bring them in, then we start to look at the things that they don't do well, and we lose our focus, and we're always trying to fix them instead of trying to optimize them.
Yeah, that's a great point, John. And I'll give you an example. I have a guy who works for me today at VPM, Leon, and I love Leon. But I did not use the hiring process to hire Leon. I knew Leon from Mind and from Empire, so I,
Mhm.
I moved him into VPM, and I had him do things. He was doing some things really well, and he was doing some things terrible. And originally, I talked to my business partner Ross, and I'm like, "Hey, Ross, I think we got to get rid of Leon." And he just laughed at me, and I go, "What are you laughing at?" He goes, you teach this stuff, people, you're not doing it. He goes, let me ask you something. What's his job description? What's his KPIs? What's his key performance indicators?
Mhm.
What's his personality trait? What are you having him do? And I realized that Leon was doing 2/3 of the job really well because it fit his personality,
Right.
and 1/3 of the job really poorly because it was not his wheelhouse. And I was focusing on the 1/3.
Yep.
And so what I did, because I could hire virtually, I found somebody in the Philippines for like $7 an hour, and I took that off of Leon, and guess what happened? Leon's production went up on those 2/3 of the things that we had to do,
Yeah.
and then the other 1/3 that we're having challenge with, this person, I think it was Angelino, when we brought him in, he ended up making that 10 times better. And one of the things I learned, if you really want to, supercharge your business, you got to hire the right people. You got to give them the training and the tools, and then you got to get out of their way.
Yeah.
And your job as the leader of the business or the manager is you still manage them, right? You still have to manage them, weekly meetings, and you still delegate, not abdicate. But the question you ask every week is, what can I do to make your job easier?
Mm, yeah,
That
absolutely. And the other thing that I just want to pick up on too is, what you referred to there, is that you invested the time and energy in actually training and onboarding them, because I think that's another thing. And let's face it, this happens a lot. You go through the hiring process, you bring somebody in, and then you either don't have an onboarding process set up, or nobody really wants to deal with training somebody. And there's nothing worse than, when somebody comes in as a new employee and their first month is sitting there twiddling their thumbs saying, oh yeah, yeah, I'll get to you later today, and then, oh sorry, like I'll catch up with you tomorrow, Pete. And that's such a terrible way to start a new employee.
Yeah, and I actually it's funny because sometimes the process takes a couple of steps back before it takes a couple of steps forward, right? And so I have this funny story. Margot was running my operation, director of operations, and she was dead set against virtual team members, and she was dead set against it. She thought the property managers should handle maintenance, and I'm like, yeah, but they're spending all their time handling maintenance, and I'm paying these people way more than I should a maintenance coordinator. And she'd come office every day with her cup of coffee, sit down at my desk and be like, so are we going to get rid of the VAs? We're going to get rid of these maintenance coordinators today. And I just give me time, give me time. And then that went on for about 89 days. On day 90, she comes to my office, sits down, she goes, huh, did maintenance go away? And I go,
Mhm.
no, they're freaking doing it. They're doing all the work. So all of a sudden, my top level team, the people I pay the most, they stopped doing the $10 an hour work. And then we were able to actually level everybody up in the organization, including myself. So
Yeah.
all my team that was doing these daily tasks, now all of a sudden they're doing inside customer sales. They're getting more referrals. They're getting back to our clients much faster, which again reduced our churn and increased number of referrals, increased our sales. It just increased everything. And for the first time in a long time, we were actually proud of the organization we had become because we wanted to provide customers with a wow experience, and we were falling short by having the
Yeah.
people in the right seat, doing the right things, rowing in the right direction, or shooting the rifle in the right direction. We were able to solve all these challenges and then really utilize the talented people we had for the right positions.
Yeah. And obviously we're going to let everybody into a huge secret here is, when people are good at what they're doing, when they enjoy what they're doing, they tend to do it much better than if they're not very good at something and they don't really want to do it. So if you're focusing people on things that they're not very good at and you're obsessing on that, you're focused in the completely wrong place.
Yeah. The other thing too, if you're running a business that's in chaos, it's hard to make money.
Yep.
Right? It's just hard to make money. We all have a cousin or a nephew or an uncle that you look at them, you're like, man, if I could just run your life, you'd be so much better in life. But they just run a chaotic life.
Mhm.
And so that's the same thing that happens with business. If you don't have an org chart, you don't know what positions you're going to hire for, you don't have the job description, you don't hire the right people, you don't train them, you don't manage them, you're in consistent chaos. And
Yeah.
here's what happens. Here's the secret. Your good people leave.
Yep.
They have what's called options. Your bad people stay because they're lazy, right? And so then next thing you know, your churn rate on your team goes up. And I actually had this happen. I had a bad team member and I had a really good team member. The good team member left. And the reason why she left was because we were not disciplining the bad team member.
Yep.
We were
Yep.
letting her get away with stuff. And she didn't want to work for a company that did that. And
Mm.
that was a big aha moment for me. And I'm like, we have to solve this. And so if you're sitting here listening to this and you're the business leader, business owner, or manager, and you're like, yep, I have 3 people right now that I know that aren't pulling their weight and we're not doing anything about it. I promise you, your gold star person, they're looking.
Yeah, and the thing about that too is, and because I've often had this conversation with people, is you also have to look at the people who aren't performing, and you've got to say to yourself, is I need to give them the opportunity to go somewhere else and be successful doing something else. I'm not doing them any favors by keeping them here. So if I'm avoiding taking action, I'm actually harming that person too, because nobody likes failing.
Uh, I think that's a great point, John. Like, I call it freeing up your future. And
Yeah.
a lot of, like just because you have this job with
Mm.
Empire Property Management, that doesn't mean it's the right spot for you in life. And you're going to be much happier if you go somewhere else. Meanwhile,
Mm.
your gold pupils, your star, your A players, they're happy where they're at. They're producing, they're happy. But that shine on that star wears off as they see all these other people that are not producing, and they're like, "What am I doing this for?" And then that's when churn
Mm.
happens.
And the other thing you referred to, there's nothing that's more encouraging for people is when you do start to take away those routine, those rote tasks, and you start to automate them, and you start to free up time for your best people to be able to focus on the high value parts of their job. That's a huge motivation factor, and it also helps alleviate the concern that, oh, is automation or they're going to take over my job or anything. You say no, it's going to give you the time to do your job even better.
Yeah. And if you hire the right people, what they will do is they'll take ownership of their process, right? Whether it's a
Mm,
sales process, like for example, we had salespeople. We use a CRM system, and what when we give them the training and they're doing their job and they're in the right seat, what happens next is they want to tweak the sequences that go out. They
sure.
want to tweak the emails. They want to make more phone calls. So if you are if you're not going to let go to grow and you're going to be this micromanager, and I see this all the time. I see this especially with virtual team members. For whatever reason, people in the States will micromanage the virtual team member making $8 an hour, but the guy making $100,000 a year comes in late, goes on lunch, takes a long lunch, takes cigarette breaks, does the water cooler talk, leaves early, but you don't really care what that guy's doing, but you care about this $8 an hour person, and
Yeah.
so you wanna manage, but not micromanage. And
Mm,
anybody who starts modifying stuff, if you give them the ownership, that means they are fully 100 bought in and they own
yeah.
that process. And you will be surprised at anybody, states or otherwise, offshore, what they can actually do if you just let go to grow. So it's like trust but verify.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I totally agree with you, and I think that's a great point, a fantastic point to end on. You have to have people who are accountable, who are bought in, and who want to do well, and who want to. And at the end of the day, if they're doing their job well, they're going to know how to make it more efficient. They're going to know better than you are. So having
Yep.
that ability to tweak the processes, etc., is fantastic.
And that's why you have to have the right metrics in place.
Yeah.
So every job role in your organization should at least have one metric. Three is the max, especially for your frontline folks.
Hmm.
And if you have them focus on one number, right? Because you can go through a whole process and you can come up with 15 numbers,
Yeah, of course.
like but what's the end result? That's the number. And at that end result, those 14 other things have to get done to get the end result. You don't have to KPI or metric those 14 other things. You just metric the end result. And
Mm.
so once you have a good KPI, right? Not one that you just pulled out of the air, right? You have to have a metric that people can hit. And I recommend that you have a metric that people can hit pretty easily at first, and then you kind of move the goalposts, so to speak. But you want to get them some wins early on. And I actually create a bonus structure based on the KPI.
Mm.
So if you meet the KPI, I give you a firm handshake and a
Right.
pat on the back, attaboy. If you exceed the KPI, you get cold hard cash.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So
I
it gets
love it.
people to hit those numbers.
Yeah. I love it. It's just like it said what the because I'm near the Marines here in Pendleton. It's like I love their thing is like if you're on time, you're late.
Yeah,
It's like
that's right.
if you met your KPIs, well done. That's what was expected of you. Now, if you exceed them, that's different.
Yeah, so I'll give you an example. We had a division for lease renewals, and if you know anything, if you own property or you're a property manager, when you go into chaos mode, the first thing that kind of goes through the wayside is lease renewals. You're like, we're not even going to do lease renewals; they might leave, so to speak,
Mm,
right? And so then we actually had, I think it was like 30% of all of our residents were on a lease. That's really low, I mean, because everybody's on month to month. And
mhm,
so we hired this girl, Jessica, and we said, hey, you're in charge of lease renewals. And to get a lease renewal done, you had to have an inspection done. And she couldn't do a lease renewal without the inspection. So I didn't KPI number of inspections. I KPI'd percentage of tenants, residents on a lease.
mhm,
And originally her number was 30%, right? We had 30%. So her number was like 35%. And she blew that out the water first month. I gave her a check. Then it was like, I think she hit like 50%. Then it was like 70. By the end of it, but within a year, we were at 93% was the KPI, and she was
wow,
exceeding that. Uh,
wow,
uh, and I couldn't move the number anymore. But that now we're maximized, we're optimal. It was optimum. So that division was running optimally. And she actually changed the process to get us there. I
right.
didn't tell her to change it. She just changed it, and we're in one of our one-on-one meetings, and, she comes out and says, "Yeah, I'm moving," we used to start 60 days out. She goes, "I started 90 days out." And I kind of taken aback. I said, "You did what?" She goes, "Yeah, I moved it." And I go, "Tell me about that. Like, like what made you decide that?" Because I tried not to ask why
Yeah.
questions.
Yep. Yep.
Because why questions kind of put you in the corner, and it's all
Sure.
of a sudden blame, excuse, and denial come out. What questions get them to think, right? So, what made you do that? And then she wrote this whole elaborate reason on why, and the inspection was done quicker, and our residents liked it better, and the owners, we were able to get all this information much quicker, and much further along, or quicker in the pipeline. And that's what allowed her to hit those numbers. Am
Right.
I going to be like, no, I got to do it my way? No, like, you took
No.
ownership and you hit your numbers. That's all. I manage by numbers now. I used to manage by feeling, and I
Yeah.
don't do
Yeah.
that
No.
anymore.
It's all about the results at the end of the day. That's the true measurement. Listen, Pete, this has been fantastic. All of Pete's information is going to be below this video, so I encourage you to go check it out. Before we go, Pete, do tell people a little bit more about you and what you do.
Yeah, so I own a platform that connects U.S. companies and Canadian companies with remote team members. It's called a direct contract hire model, meaning that you find them on our platform, you can interview them, hire them through our platform, and pay them through our platform. So it's all one stop shopping. We actually have over 40 courses, from marketing to sales to property management, real estate related stuff. We have a DIY model, do it yourself. We have a do it with you model. We call it the white glove. It's free. And we have a do it for you model. So we'll actually tee people up, and then you make the final decision. That's called the gold glove. We charge 1,500, but if anybody emails me with sales pop in the subject, I can connect you with anybody on our team, and we'll give a 50% discount. So we'll make it 750 instead of 1,500.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you. And again, like I said, all the information will be below this video. So go ahead and check it out. Listen, thanks again, Pete, for today. Thanks for sharing all your insights. Thank you for watching and listening. And I will see you all again very soon. Thank you.